Here we are, standing by for today's daily log. So, this one goes out to Mr. Hogan, who is an attorney and one hell of a teacher, I hasten to add, contrary to his self-deprecating statement prior to taking me on what was one of the best Orange Grove tours. I have been to an orange grove before, but never in that part of the woods or part of the world. So thank you to Mr. Hogan, attorney at law, Hogan and Hogan. Look them up. Awesome people. So my question, if I may be so bold, sir, would be to ask, and I'll try to give the summary of it. The SEC have got a certain jurisdictional authority. However, their influential authority has global reach, I would purport. So I think that the global reach and the influence of the SEC does potentially, I think, broaden the scope to at least ask the question, what is their liability for undue influence in jurisdictions that are not, in a strict sense, under their authority. However, that they are influencing, right? So, and the disclosure around all of that, so that is it bilaterally agreed that it where is undue influence by a foreign authority, muddying the waters for their own political or other vested self-interest. When they're in this modus operandi and doing that, is there an international court in The Hague or something, International Court of Human Rights, that might just sort of say, well, you know what, the price of shekels in Cheyenne has gone a shit shower. How about we step in and say, SEC, you've got to stop with your undue influence. It's having, you are ultra vires. Wow. You're beyond your required power. You've overstepped the mark. Pull your head in. But beyond that, if you don't, then those who would otherwise not have direct recourse against the SEC, because how can you sue a foreign... Can I sue the foreign entity, government entity, can I sue as an Australian citizen with the following plaint? Can I sue the SEC somehow on the basis that I'm trying to recover a financial loss so caused by this undue influence of a former SEC member whose conduct is contrary to the public interest, which is the scope and a foundational scoping restriction on their remit in their constitution. They've first and foremost, and what is that? Is that definition extend to foreign? Is that domestic and foreign, or what? Act in the public's best interest. Well, do we not now have a global public? Is a public not more of a, what public, like the fence boundaries of that orange grove, in that case, Howie, which has become a household name almost in Australia. So I thoroughly recommend a field trip with Mr. Hogan. I'm not going to attempt to improve upon perfection. So I just wondered what my plaint would be. Assuming that first limb's a goer, might be, no mate, just go straight to The Hague, or you have to first to do that go to the highest court in Australia, which would be the Australian High Court, due to the Privy Council separation of whatever back in the day, when the Privy Council and the were the whatever jurisdiction. Well, it's relevant because it indicates how jurisdictional change may occur without invasion, or warfare. Doesn't seem enslavement sort of seems prerequisite par for the course, but I digress. So the laws can change, jurisdictions can change, and it might be given that, since the Howie case, we've had dial-up. Shit, we've even got inside toilets now. So it might be a bit of a time to review some of the sort of technology around the hygiene of the ethics of a Mr. Clayton, a former. Now, when someone leaves office, do they remain obligated for anything that they've done previously? And I noted earlier that there was something mentioned about sovereign immunity or something. Pardon my French, that's the vernacular. It's not exactly called that, but something to do with the fact that he's got exemption from prosecution, I think that's what I heard. So how is that possible? If he's done something that's fraudulent, negligent or criminal, innocent, perhaps, are the four maybe broad categories that should first be run past and go, yep, no, don't embarrass the SEC any further than they have already been embarrassed, disgraced in fact, and potentially should be thrown out of office entirely, or that their entire constitution needs to be flexible enough to accommodate the current realities of the landscape within which society operates. So things that are prevalent now that never would have been couldn't have been in contemplation, in all fairness, because outside the scope of fantasy, because they weren't invented, they couldn't have been referenced in any legal precedent, could they? And of the ones that have, they don't seem to be particularly relevant. And the perpetual pursuance of this, at least on the surface, and if you want to regulate something, regulate YouTube. And if the people talking smack on YouTube saying that the XRP are, Ripple are in the, are a victim of the SEC almost, as are the people, the public at large, me being one of them, right? Because I've put coin in there. And they have just created this undue influence on an entire market that was worth $3 trillion. So the SEC single-handedly have managed to shave $1.5 trillion? I don't know. I'll stop counting, million. We're all going to be millionaires to the moon in Ferraris, apparently. So, how you going, Elon? We're not all like that. We need protection from the SEC, and this guy has brought that institution into ill repute. So what has the SEC currently done? Gary Gensler, the new head, I think that's him, hell of a dancer, puts on a good lecture there at MIT, very entertaining character. But, he's a G-man till he dies. You can tell. He looks like he should be out of a Steve Austin movie. That's the $6 million, billion. I'll get confused. Moving on. So Gensler's moved over. Gensler, I think you're culpable here now because you've been there long enough to have gone, chuck it. All right, we've had a quick glance. You have not endorsed dropping it because it's ongoing. Now, are you aware, Gensler, of the influence this case has had on that $3 trillion market? Are you aware of it? Because the other day you got called out seemingly for not knowing how many coins there were, and XRP is no ordinary coin, is it? There's a few use cases that sets it apart. Anyway, and a few more that you're trying to tack on for your own advantage, because you just want to grab the taxation and control of this $3 trillion market, right? Because if you actually gave a shit about the public at large, which you don't, because you haven't dropped the case. But then with that said, I hasten to add, well, what would I know? Because I only know what I watch on YouTube. So if they're shit canning the SEC, don't you have some obligation? Because they are also influencing the market. So what have you done about influencers like Elon Musk and Donald Trump, for that matter? who, when they blag on the blower and the hooter and the shooter and the tooter and the twitter and the shitter and when they're on the Bush Telegram, right? Because back in '38, when Howie was about, I think, that neck of the bloody timeline, well, what was going on? Fucking telegram. They used to call it cable. Remember cable? And how that came, the first money wire transfer from, which way did it go? New York to the other way? Fascinating history, but guess what, mate? We're not sitting around the campfire here. There's a trillion and a half, right? There's a trillion and a half being shaved off, and no thanks in part to you and your former colleague, who, as a pair, should be hauled up before a Royal Commission in Australia and go, well, fuck, federal minister for fucking, ask the Americans to stop hitting us over the head with a fucking hammer. We don't need it. Thanks, mate. Right? And you've cut me in half, you cunt. Cut me in half in a fucking week when you should have dropped that fucking case. And we're fucking dirty about it. Right? And that's just the Australians. So, we're your allies. I'm just saying, hello. Wake up and smell the fucking mint. Jesus, mate. You fucked up. Your mate fucked up, and if you're supporting your mate who fucked up, you're a fucking aiding and abetting a potential felon. You wake up. They won't be fucking taking MIT lectures in fucking Boggo Road, mate. Perhaps they should start. I think I'd offer that for free if I were you. In fact, it is. Check him out on YouTube. Excellent lecturer. But what he's doing, I think potentially could it be criminal, right? If our mate who left, Clayton, if he's run out the door and passed it a smoking turd to Ginsley, who's happily accepted the fucking sugar bag, I opened it up and gone, oh, fuck. How much? A fucking trillion. $1.5 trillion. Fuck me. If I had a crystal ball that showed that in the, future, I'd be, as Ginsley, going, I better pass this turd. How do I offload this turd? Why don't you give it to the current head of the Australian Banking Association? She's a real go-getter as well. Check her out. You'll get on like a bloody house on fire. Pardon the. You'll get on like a, yeah. Anyway, but for fuck's sake, get off me tits. Enough of this fucking court case already. Let XRP go back to where it was, I don't say price-wise, but at least in terms of circumstance-wise. But then you've got an obligation that's impacting, or rather you've got an influence that's impacting the broader market, not just this XRP Ripple case directly. All of the digital assets that were trading on exchanges, all of the exchange-listed assets, well, that list has changed now. So there's been good ones go out. So you're influencing innovation in that sense and in a bad way. As the good ones go out, like those that have got payment networks, developed protocols that stand to do green production. How much is the current SWIFT? What's their green record? What's the record of SWIFT? If we can improve upon SWIFT in a white paper, right? So I've got a business case for a white paper. That's worth to me 1.5 trillion. I can't ask that. Well, it depends what currency. So I'll do it for free. I'll do a Prince 2 compliant white paper, which would be a business case. On a white paper first, that's right, do the business case. The justification for that would be my 150 grand, let's be real. I'll deliver it in 12 months, plus expenses. And what it'll be about is a green-powered, solar-powered battery that runs a data centre in the middle of absolutely nowhere, but that's in a footprint of a satellite that connects to a similar little franchise dotted all over the globe. And as a byproduct, you'll have electricity to power refrigerators, and greenhouses and pumps and fucking fishing, zit and buttons. Okay, so that little data center runs the payment network fully off the grid, fault tolerant, and it's got backups all over the world. It's available in a do-it-yourself kit. It's scalable, so it scales down to a DIY job for yourself. Get out of the city, isolate yourself for COVID until, that sorts itself out in the next 20 years as we recover. And then you've got your own, you've got control over your environment. Yeah, so projects in controlled environments, Prince 2, check it out, that's what we do here. Moving quite along. But if I were able to say to the SEC, you're holding up this project, right? So every delay that you're causing in the courts, you actually, you're hurting these people because these projects are only able to be funded thanks to innovations such as digital credit and digital investment. So that's exclusively offered under XRP RippleNet, regardless of what currency. We haven't talked any, that's just our relationship that we're trying to build. And I haven't had time to do that beforehand, so I do that now. They're too busy to take it on. So I need Collins Private Equity to be formed, and that's exactly what we do. We have scalable solutions. Imagine getting out there to Whyalla, and you go, what? Yep, so instead of farming the land at Whyalla around that furnace where they can't get power or it's too expensive, because that's a fairly intensive operation. When does it become, what scale does it have to become, at what scale? So you get your little plot of dirt and you put solar panels on the lot and you can pull them up and move them on and live there when you've done farming the sun. Sun farmers powering Whyalla with the Tesla battery, and he's already done a prototype out that way. Only there's, and the income for the town outside the mine that most will work in, a supporting income would be selling power to a cooperative that you've got an equitable and proportional share as to the capital and income and risk and all that. So you're an owner and you're a farmer, and you might be working part-time at the bloody mill because there's some work on. But if not, you're sustainable in the off-season because the place has got free power. So if you lose your job, at least you don't have a fucking aircon bill. And I don't know if most people understand that, And when those things hit without work, it's only a matter of, credit and time. So, so how is the SEC affecting, what's that got to do with the price of oranges in California? Well, everything really. That could go from zero in a week to possible, right? At least as far as getting the funding for the white paper is concerned. So, I don't subscribe, I just need the money. Send it in via GoFundMe. And if someone knows how to send up a GoFundMe page, could just do that and get in touch. Not. Because what will happen there is they'll get ransomwared. And wasn't it great the other day too that, the uncertainty that you're putting, given that they were managed to catch these, recover the money from that ransomware attack through the, would they have been able to do that with SEC dollars? Sorry, US dollars or government dollars? Which is more secure in terms of ransomware, which has been used, and as a balanced media, don't you have to show both sides of the argument, not just CNBC's version? And their absence has been quite noted from the conversation, other than, Mr. Keane and Joey, Senior, they were like that pair in the Muppet Show, up there in the box there, not knowing a thing about opera and having the most to say about it, and that's the SEC now. What do SEC regulate? You've had 8 years and you're asking for extensions. a 60-day extension. You must be mad. What you should be looking at is, what did Clayton do? Is there a case to answer? Did you do anything about that guy? Most irregular. What do you do about your influence, rather than, what responsibility do you take for your influence in the global market now? And what's the extent of liability? What's the effort that you're reaching out to make sure that, if John Clayton's behaviour, if that was a Russian that did it, we'd be moaning, wouldn't we? If it was a Russian fucking SEC doing this shit to the crypto market, would someone be moaning? I'm sure they would, and for the wrong reason potentially. And the reason that the SEC are doing it is not in the public interest, I would argue, and I would argue that public interest extends here to Australia and the broader global market, where they are in far more dire straits, where some of the unbanked, and that is a basic human right, isn't it? Does not everyone have the right to a bank account? And by denying those that have this right, to the extent that this is criminal behaviour by Clayton, and I put to you, it potentially could be. It could be potentially, because there's a vested interest in working. Who's Clayton working for? Are they hiring? What do you got to do to get in there? Steal your mother's fucking, right? Jesus Christ. Clayton has got a case to answer, and there could be potentially fucking big trillions of litigants just like me that are in this boat. Australia's only a small country. The damage to me, well, shit, it's better just to get on with it. But by all means, if there's someone like Hogan that could give some advice, I'd be, I'd be more than grateful if I thought that there was some chance of getting, me money back, but only to the extent the SEC has done something wrong. And I think I don't accuse them of that. We don't get good feeds, as I've demonstrated. We get it all, one side on YouTube, it's all green. Nothing to mention on mainstream media about this case, really. Other than a few old crusty muppets that really don't know a thing about crypto. I'm one of them. I didn't want to know about crypto. I was forced by the SEC to get into the market because they're creating so much volatility, and it seemed evident that they'd lose this case from all reports. And, I made my own mind up on that. And now they hold the world to ransom through their potentially criminal behaviour by manipulating the market that they've got 8 years to regulate. It's getting out of their grasp when they're going, oh shit, we don't know it. We didn't start the fire, and then run along and work for the competition. And this is what's criminal. You're benefiting, right? So what's the nexus between that benefit and your behaviour? Well, doesn't look good at first glance, mate. Hey, it doesn't look good, You better get a lawyer, son. And I'm asking Hogan first, so, hopefully they'll take the case on, but I don't think you're going to find a better lawyer than Hogan and Hogan. See you later. I might see you in court, Clado. Yeah, the regulator you have when you're not having a regulator, Mr. Clayton. And why don't you do a guest performance, $1,000 a plate, you Ponzi puppet? Why don't you do that? I'll pay $1,000 to go and see you, sit down with handcuffs if I have to, and listen to you tell us, the general public, and that includes some Australians and others who are underbanked, non-banked, or have a human right to a bank account which your behaviour has intervened with, right? And you want another 60 days to continue the drag out the pain. Enough, mate. Right, you go back there, finish what you started, take your punishment. You might lose your job, and probably should, given the conflict of interest, and very clear one that is emerging. And what, you're not going to say anything? Mate, you better. I think the markets would like an explanation. Please explain in a Senate inquiry in Australia, and see whether any other countries' jurisdictions are affected by, or have punters that are affected. And let's see if, what Mr. Hogan says, and he might be able to, if it's in the public interests, only if it's in the public interests, he might be able to proceed with it, And, we can talk about taking some escrow on a GoFundMe basis in due course, but that'll be done credibly in writing and delivered by a fucking, a representative. How about that? So, hi, I represent XRP. Yep, we want to do this green project, and it's 150 grand just for the white paper, because we don't know what we're doing, and it might not cost 150 grand. That's just a ballpark. If it costs 20 grand and takes a fucking week, I'm in. You know, if that is any chance of happening, imagine the employment that it'd bring. Now, selling a town here for $350,000. Yeah, I know you think I'm strange, but it's true. $350,000 for a town. It was on the local news. So wouldn't it be great to run that town and say everyone in this town that buys into the project gets free electricity? Because the first thing we're doing is setting up all of our infrastructure. It's all green, and what you'll be doing is you'll be working in a data centre, keeping these computers running, right? It will be a bit of rocket science because we'll have a few satellites up in the air, so if you're into that kind of crap or would like to, you can migrate from answering the phone to reading up on how to be a geek in your spare time while you're in the office or on call in the laboratory, building the shoebox rocket that powers the shoebox satellite, that powers the telecommunications and also scans for space junk, a separate project, maps space junk or assists in the communication of that. We fulfill black spots in the NBN. How you going, Turnballs? Sounding good so far. But we're only going to do it if we've got XRP and RippleNet, both. And if we don't get XRP, we'll go ahead with RippleNet. But we prefer XRP. Now, is what I'm doing there, is security? How would you characterise that, SEC? Because before I do it, I need to ask the SEC. But they don't need to ask us before they can do what they're doing. And then answering questions of us to say, hey, what the living fire truck are you doing throwing that bag of turd over the fence and then running off and cashing in, right? And there's nothing there that the SEC have by way of a case is self-evident. In any case, the damage that you've done is, at the moment, it's $1.5 trillion. So it's still got a ways to go before it hits the total $3 billion. If you manage to wipe out $3 trillion fucking wipeout, imagine that if you kept going, and as a consequence of the disruption that you did to that market, you're creating people that would otherwise not engage in crypto to get into it. You fuckheads, you don't know a thing about the market, mate. And that was evident because you are legislating, are you not, for yesterday's market? You're a retro regulator. Your legacy, fuck off out the way. You're going to get squished. You're in the middle of the road, right? You've had 8 years to do what you had 8 years, you've lost the fucking race. Get the fuck out the way, because there are potentially, there's at least one litigant, me. And I'm saying I'm a project manager, I want to do all this great stuff. I had invested, I had hoped to get out by the 30th of April. Look at the picture on the wall. I'm not shitting you. That's who I am. That's my number. And look, I got hammered because of this frivolous and pointless and not, is this guy, is the SEC gonna, with as much vigour as it has pursued the Ripple in the public interest, are they going to pursue the former colleague with as much vigour in the public interest? I mean, is there a little bit of a conflict? Who is it that in that situation where it's, and I fucking firmly say that the SEC can't do it. They can't regulate their own. So there has to be an external inquiry, parliamentary inquiry, right? In this country, a royal commission into financial services. And how many of those recommendations have been contravened by what's called, it's not frivolous litigant, is it? They don't call it frivolous, malicious, malignant. No, it's got a name. Come on, litigious. Who? What? Stop me. I'm just fucking bad. All right? So the litigator, the vexatious litigator provisions, if the vexatious litigator happens to be a government agency, courts need to be, and I don't want to say too much because I think the judge working on a weekend and a public holiday no less, certainly demonstrates a work ethic that's conducive with and she does acknowledge, and I think is owed some gratitude as a member of the public at large and no further. I just think, thank you for working that Memorial Day weekend. Really appreciated that guts effort on a Sunday. You don't get that from your average regulator, government-backed regulator. I'm talking about the courts who are independent, but generally government agencies who are government-funded entities don't seem to be operating in the current paradigm. And have a look at Ginsler's record there with the GFC and the Frank Dodd and the provisions. And did anyone even bother? I mean, how many, Basel II recommendations were actually implemented because banks actually didn't have the financial resources to implement them? I'm just saying, mate, by the time you do a white paper, right, it's 150 grand for me a year and I'm only a one-man band, right? But in the time that takes, you could, Napster went overnight. Innovations, they're exactly that. And they need someone with a bit more cut and thrust. And I think SEC's had its time and day in the sun, so I've used Sun. I think go back to Macadamia Farmer. Academia Farmer. You're an academic, mate. Go and farm some academics, but they're not needed in the market because the market's quite happy to regulate itself. And you have these swings only when you get intervention, ironically, and I think the empirical evidence would support that view. So it's on you, sir, to get out of the way and fall on your sword and take the bullet for the SEC and bring that fucking antiquated, irrelevant dinosaur to a close. We're sick and tired of paying for your fucking lunches and conferences and crap. You're not green at all. We could regulate this market. We'll set up a fucking centre of excellence, which will be an international regulator at Whyalla, plugged into our steel plant, demonstrating, steel's not exactly a green industry, but it's a lot more green thanks to Tesla. And they regulated him out the fucking way out here in Australia. So we'll do a proof of concept. We'll ask permission if we can replicate that battery setup and just go ahead and do it. Like we're doing a trip to Bunnings and globally. And let's see how quick that proof of concept can move into something like a working prototype that's of a certain scale such that it's delivering benefits in accordance with the benefits management approach. So check out Prince 2, or none of this is bullshit. But it's being thwarted, fucking stopped, cut in half. I would have had the capital if the price returned to where it was before the SEC had intervened. It's a combination of interference and intervened, right? Because there are a few fiends there, or were, Clayton, and now I think Ginsler, if you're not going to fucking, mate, if you're not going to balls up, fuck off and take the rest of SEC down and out with you. You're no longer required in the crypto. You've made yourself a vexatious litigant against everyone. And now because the SEC can't sue anyone, that doesn't mean that anyone, that doesn't mean that in all time and reality that there may not be an instance of someone that does require exactly what you've done to occur. Only you've gone about it in such a back-assed fucking fashion that you've precluded yourself now from ever gaining any credibility which you require to run an organisation who has as its fucking fundamental purpose to put the best interests of the public first in terms of unscrupulous behaviour. Well, what provisions have you, sir, and what recourse do I have? And this is a broader question, I don't know. Where do I go with my money that I've lost because the SEC didn't settle on the 30th of April and have dragged it on and continue to fucking indicate they wish to drag it on a further 60 days, and the request for that's dragged it on. And all the while, what happens? Well, they're claiming this is a a volatile speculative asset that bears no resemblance to a currency, yet they're the ones that are creating the fucking waves that are, you see, but for their influence, right? Let's have an estoppel on this case, right? Let's throw it out for now. I can see how the markets react. If they calm down, there's your proof potentially that the SEC may have some influence over. They're actually the ones causing the damage to the public at large, the people they're supposed to be protecting. They've delayed projects. They've denied people banking. They're not green. They could help the people of Whyalla out by at least thinking about them, if nothing else. Doing a white paper, great. If it ever stood a chance of happening, could I be a solar farmer in Whyalla and sell solar panels? Well, it comes with free electricity, and with the money you save, we've got a free university. Get fucked, have you? Yeah, what do you teach? Well, you start in the call centre and you work your way through like an apprenticeship, but you get a degree, really. No HECS debt, no HECS debt. What do you do? Well, we do telephone counselling. You don't? Yeah, we do. For free. Well, to start with. Then when you earn your fucking stripes, we let you out there with real liveys. What do you think? Yep.